we will be making the road trip to Happy Valley to be in attendance, because me as a lifelong Penn State fan, there was no way I was missing Ohio State, Penn State, number 4 Ohio State at number 3 Penn State, noon Eastern time on Fox. I personally can't wait to get down to Happy Valley. We're driving down on Friday. It was like a 6.5 hour road trip that we're going to do.
There, yeah.
So we're meeting up my dad and my uncle, so I'm excited for you to meet those guys. It'll be a lot of fun. And then we're driving right back after the game's over, because we got to be back for our Sunday review show, obviously. So can't wait for that one. Top 5 matchup between these two schools. And the storylines to know, at least, is the health of Drew Aller, because they enter, the Nittany Lions do, this is their biggest game of the season. They have a question mark on who will be under center for them, because Drew Aller injured his left knee in the win over Wisconsin this past Saturday and didn't return in the game. And head coach James Franklin said recently in his press conference that he expects Aller to be a game-time decision on Saturday. If he's unable to go, then Bo Perbula will start for Penn State. The redshirt sophomore was inspiring in relief of Aller on Saturday. He had an 87.9 passing grade against Wisconsin and completed nearly 85% of his attempts. But even with that, even as inspiring as Bo Perbula was, the Nittany Lions' chances of winning this game probably hinges on whether or not their star quarterback is able to go.
Yeah, and I think, look, Bogue did a really good job in the second half against Wisconsin, and part of this is evaluation. I think there is a true evaluation going on right now about whether or not Drew Aller can play, but Andy Kotelnicki was prepared with Bo Perbula. That's two very different offenses that these two guys can run. So I think there is a part of this that's a little bit of gamesmanship. It's going to stay a game-time decision, and we may not know until the opening snap, because they're two very different quarterbacks with different skill sets. And if Aller is not 100%, look, after this Ohio State game, Penn State still has a very clear road to 11-1 into the playoff, right? Even if they're not going to win the conference, I think they're going to be looking short and long-term at Drew Aller's health here, and as far as just how the remainder of their season can go, because I think they're a team that even if they don't win the conference, they could get in one of those first 4 home playoff spots in the 5 through 8 slots in the playoffs. So I think they're going to really evaluate this beyond just this week. But if Drew can go, they're going to let him go.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point that you just made right there, because in past years in a 4-team playoff era, it'd be like, hey, we need Aller out there. We need him out there, because if we lose this game, we're not making the playoffs. So we desperately need to get him out there no matter what. Now, if you're Penn State, yes, you still want him out there for the biggest game of the year. But you could also think long-term, like, hey, if there's a really good chance he re-injures that knee if we put him out there, maybe let's not, like, maybe, I'm not saying wave the white flag or anything like that, but maybe say, hey, it's a long season. Like you said, 11-1 still gets you in the playoff. So Penn State could be thinking about that long-term as well. So it'd be interesting. Game time decision. Jesus.
There you go.
But Bo Perbula, I would think Aller's going to play. He's from Ohio. Ohio State was recruiting him a lot. I'm sure he's got a lot of family members and friends that went to Ohio State. He probably is like, no, I'm playing in this game. So I'm not, again, I have no inside info, but I would be pretty surprised if we are there in Happy Valley and Drew Aller is not the quarterback for Penn State. So we will see. I think he actually took off the knee brace after the game was over, which is a good sign, at least, against Wisconsin. So we'll see what happens there. Dawn, you actually have the Penn State offense, though. So whether it be Aller or Perbula under center for Nittany Lions, what should we be looking out for when they have the ball?
Yeah, what I kind of want to see, regardless of which quarterback is in there, and this isn't necessarily a matchup thing or anything like that, Penn State's had a habit of getting off to slow starts in these games, especially offensively, and it feels like they kind of use almost like the first round in a boxing match, where you just kind of throwing jabs and feeling out where the rest of the game should go. Right now, Penn State, they're 7th in the FBS in offensive grade, but when you talk about the first quarter of these games, they're 30th in offensive grade, which is still obviously very good when you're talking about out of 130-something teams, but it's just not quite on an explosive level, right? 30th in offensive grade, 50th in EPA per play, whereas the rest of the game, they're 7th in offensive grade and 5th in EPA per play, and that's much more representative of how their offense has mostly played this year. But they've only scored 24 points in 7 first quarters this season, and just 3 points in their last 3 games together in the first quarter. So it just seems to be this habit they have. I don't know if it's a habit of being mentally ready to play, or if I think there is some conservative play calling that is kind of involved here. They're just kind of trying to feel it out, find the rhythm, find what formations, what shifts are working, and what defenses are giving them, right? So I think I look at the passing game especially, okay, for the rest of the games after the first quarter, Penn State has a 10.1 yard average depth of target, right? We're getting downfield, we're attacking vertically. In the first quarter, that's just 6.2 yards on an average depth of target. It's just, you can feel it is more conservative, and that 6.2 yards, that's the 12th lowest mark in the country in the first quarter of games. They've only attempted 1 deep pass the entire year in the first quarter. I just have to wonder, against an Ohio State team, their defense has been much better in the first half of these games. In the first half of games, Ohio State has the highest graded defense in the country. We know they're really good. They got star power all over the place. Jack Sawyer, Tyreek Williams, Caleb Downs. They have a million superstars, but they get off to good starts and they establish their dominance in these games. And Penn State doesn't do that offensively. So I'm curious to see if Penn State, if it's going to be the same thing and they're just going to try to establish the run and easy throws and get in a rhythm and then figure it out as the game goes on. The halftime adjustments they've been great on both sides of the ball. Or do they maybe come out, even if it is Bo, and just now this is the game where they break the tendency, right? And you come out, maybe you take a shot in the first play of the game instead of just, throwing a slant or throwing a screen or just handing the ball off. It just feels like it takes them a minute to get the engine running, and I want to see. I actually want to see maybe, just maybe, if this is the week where Andy Kotelnicki goes, let's take an early shot and let's try to get an early 7-0 lead and then let the defense play.
And another thing about that too is I kind of love if it is Bo out there, first play, even Aller out there, take first play, take a shot. Like I remember last year when Utah played Florida and Cam Rising was out for that game, and we're like, okay, Utah, man, got to run the ball the entire game.
Nate Johnson, right?
Yeah. Or no, was it Ray Johnson or Bryson Barnes?
I thought it was Johnson.
It might have been Nate Johnson. I think you're right. And then first play of the game, they're like, nope, we're taking a shot. Bam, 70-yard touchdown. Like, oh boy, like that is not at all what we thought. So I think that could be a really, really fun thing to do if they do that as well. Are You Yeti in the chat actually made a great point on not only Drew Aller from Ohio, Will Howard has said in press conferences he grew up a Penn State fan and wanted to go to Penn State, never got an offer from Penn State, and he said in the press conference, like, all right, now I'm going to try to show them that I was worth a scholarship offer. So both these guys, obviously Aller, I think, got an offer from Ohio State. Obviously, he's a 5-star recruit. Howard did not get one. So these are two guys kind of going against like the schools that they grew up at least watching and loving at least. So my side of the ball, though, is Will Howard. And really, it's not even about him. It's about the offensive line. Because Ohio State's offensive line has been completely rebuilt right now because they suffered a couple weeks ago against Oregon. Star left tackle, projected top 50 pick in the NFL draft, Josh Simmons, suffered a season-ending knee injury. His replacement, Zen Mikulski, really struggled in relief of him. He had a 15.6 pass blocking grade across the last two games against Oregon and against Nebraska. That was the 7th worst among FBS tackles in that stretch. Then Mikulski was carted off in the win over Nebraska, which obviously we haven't gotten an official word on him yet, but his availability for Saturday is very, very much in doubt. So what they've done since then, they moved their star left guard, Donovan Jackson, out to left tackle, and they put sophomore Luke Montgomery in at left guard. So you lose your superstar left tackle, then your backup left tackle goes down. Now your left guard kicks out to left tackle, and now you have a new left guard in there. The whole left side of the offensive line for Ohio State is in complete disarray right now due to injuries. If Donovan Jackson is indeed the left tackle, really good offensive lineman, really strong player, but obviously as a guard kicking out to tackle, there's an issue with speed there. That could be an issue against Abdul Carter and against Denai Dennis-Sutton, who Denai Dennis-Sutton as well, he is questionable because he suffered an injury against Wisconsin as well, so we don't know if he'll be out there. Abdul Carter, though, we do know will be out there. And Penn State's defense this year, Dawn, is 9th in pass rush win rate at 47%, and they're one of the 15 best in America in pass rushing grade at 80.4 and pressure rate at 38.3%. And speaking of Will Howard, he is the 6th worst passing grade under pressure this year at 28.4. So if you get Will Howard under pressure, and Penn State's got a really good pass rush against a completely rebuilt offensive line that's really just banged up right now, that could spell a lot of trouble for this Ohio State offense. And especially if you give Will Howard time, if they do perform well, then you got Jeremiah Smith, you got Emeka Egbuka, you got Carnell Tate, all those weapons. Penn State's got a good secondary. I don't know if any secondary in the country can handle those weapons if you give Will Howard time back there. So they got to get after Will Howard. And then also, another concerning trend for Ohio State that we talked about before, Ohio State's run game over the last two games has not been good either. Like Quinshon Judkins has been held, I think, below 30 yards in each of the last two games when he's been one of the best running backs in America his whole career. Trayvon Henderson as well has not done too well either. So Penn State, 17th in run defense grade. So you got a dominant front seven in both pass rushing and run defense, a rebuilt offensive line, a banged up offensive line, and a run game that's really struggling, and a quarterback who struggles immensely under pressure. That's a big issue if this offensive line does not hold up against Penn State.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned out on the edge if Donovan Jackson's going to play left tackle, but then you mentioned a backup left guard too now, and those big guys in the middle like Zane Durant are not easy to block either. Look, it's hard enough to block Penn State when your offensive line is fully healthy, right? They're one of the best pass rushers, one of the best units in America. Now you're talking about they're shorthanded up front, and it was already hard enough to block them. I think it's going to be a real battle in the trenches on both sides of the ball, but this one especially is going to be the one to watch because I don't think Ohio State, honestly, up front played all that well against Nebraska last week. It wasn't great. The run blocking was okay, but it's been a struggle lately for Ohio State up front. Their O-line has not played at an elite level, and now they're banged up.
Yeah, I think they had like a sub-50 pass blocking grade against them, and then they weren't great in the Oregon game either with Josh Simmons going down with an injury. So that's a big issue against a dominant Penn State defensive line, and if Denai Dennis Sutton is healthy and he's out there, that's an even bigger issue for them. Dawn, ultimately, for the game that we'll be in attendance for, are you going to break my heart and my family's hearts that you're going to meet, and we're gonna house you, we're gonna feed you? Are you going to break their hearts and pick Ohio State, or will you be an honorary Chadwick this week and pick the Nittany Lions to win?
Obviously, with it being the biggest game of the week, I think especially the Drew Aller injury makes it an even harder game to pick. And I think the margin one way or the other is going to be incredibly narrow. I think it's going to be a low-scoring defensive game. Because of Aller, the questions with Aller, and I think a big thing is I'm a little bit worried too about this Penn State offensive line. They're a decent unit, they're not a great unit, and they're not a great run blocking unit. Sometimes they take a while to get in rhythm. I'm a little worried that Ohio State's defense might just kind of outdo Penn State's defense just a little bit here, and at least with Ohio State, you still have Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka on the outside who can make enough plays. I think this game comes down to probably turnovers, and if one defense can force the other into mistakes, and if there is an early explosive play from one way or the other for a team to gain the early momentum. But I think it's a classic defensive Big Ten game, but I have Ohio State 19-16.
Okay. All right, breaking my heart, Dawn. At the risk of being called a homer, I'm picking Penn State 24-23. Really, it hinges on Drew Aller's health. I agree with you. If he's out of this game or even not close to 100%, I think Ohio State's winning this game. But if he's good to go, I think Penn State will win in a close one because of his defensive line having a significant advantage over Ohio State's offensive line. If you get Will Howard under pressure and you shut down those running backs, it could be a long day for that Ohio State offense. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game either way. But I do think Penn State, for the first time since, I think, 2016, I believe, I think Penn State will pull it off and beat Ohio State. So first time in 8 years, I think that'll happen. And we'll see what happens in Happy Valley in what should be the biggest game of the weekend and one of the biggest games of the entire season.